Welcome back. I'm Jason Bangeter, Executive Chef of Luma and O&B Canteen restaurants here at TIFF Bell Lightbox, and your host this evening. For our fourth installment of Food on Film, we have a particularly special treat, and literally, as you just heard, our guest, Jacquy Pfeiffer, is not only a world-renowned master pastry chef, but also the star of tonight's films, Kings of Pastry. The documentary you're about to see offers an intimate insight into the trials and preparation of the prestigious Meilleur Ouvrier de France, or MOF, competition. Legendary documentary directing team, D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hegedus, met Jacquy through a mutual friend who studied at the French pastry school in Chicago. When they heard he was training for the MOF, they became fascinated by the intense competition and decided to film his story. The beginning of the film really focuses on Jacquy's training at the French pastry school, which he founded with Sébastien Canon in 1995. The school has become one of the leading culinary arts schools in the US and the only top culinary school that focuses exclusively on pastry. Prior to founding the French School of Pastry, Jacquy had also worked as a pastry chef for some very distinguished clients, including royalty in Saudi Arabia, the Sultan of Brunei, as well as world-renowned hotels including the Hyatt Regency in Hong Kong and the Fairmont and Sheraton hotels in Chicago. 6 weeks before the MOF competition, Jacquy and his coach, world-renowned pastry chef and MOF winner Stéphane Glacier, moved to Alsace to continue their intense training, leading up to those crucial 3 days of competition. After they relocated to France, Pennebaker and Hughes, or Hegedus, also began filming 2 additional MOF competitors, Philippe Rigolot and Regis Lizard. It was actually a bit of a nerve-wracking time for the filmmakers, as they had not received full permission to shoot the competition and did not know until right before if they would be able to film the actual event. When they were finally given permission, with special restrictions of course, such as no boom radio, no mics, and definitely no movement in the kitchen, which we'll talk about a bit later, they became the first filmmakers ever to have access to this competition. Before we watch the film, I want to give you a little more background information on the MOF. This competition exists in a wide range of trades, from pastry to butchery, sculpture, textiles, ceramics, and even floral arrangements. The competitions are recognized as a third-level degree by the French Ministry of Labor. The MOF candidates are judged not only on final products, but their speed, their ability, professionalism, and character during the presentation process. Competitors for the MOF do not actually compete against each other, but they compete against themselves. In fact, in theory, all finalists could win the MOF. But of course, with the ruthless judging, this has never actually been the case. The competition is grueling and requires a pastry chef to draw on many different skill sets to create everything from cakes to traditional pastries to extraordinary sculptures that at first glance appear to be carved out of glass. In fact, many of the skills utilized by the pastry chefs in this competition go beyond what we would normally associate with the culinary field, but are essential to expressing the artistic talents required at the MOF, including glass blowing and sculpture. We are very pleased to have Jacquy Pfeiffer with us tonight to present Kings of Pastry and talk about the process of competing in the MOF while under the eyes of a camera, which I don't know why he even agreed to doing this. The amount of pressure and stress that he must have gone through without the camera alone is mind-boggling and amazing. Please join me now in welcoming Jacquy Pfeiffer to the stage to say hello. Welcome, Chef.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
This is a great honor to have Jacquy here. I think this is the first film that we're showing in the Food and Film series where we actually have the star. Pretty amazing. Yeah. And before we get going, just a quick question. Jacquy, just leave everyone with this. What is the toughest part of training for the MOF?
The toughest part is the sacrifice. You have to actually sit down your family and tell them that you love them, but you have to go for 3 years. The entire process of this competition takes 3 years. What you see in the movie is only the final few 6 weeks. But before going to the final, a candidate has to go through a semi-final, which is the same amount of work done a year prior. So the sacrifice, not seeing your family and children and friends for 3 years is a pretty big one.
That's pretty big. Well, listen, you will be on the edge of your seat this evening watching this film, I guarantee it. And I look forward to talking to you and Jacquy after the film. Enjoy the show. Hey.
How do you do it?
It's a little sneaky for a pastry chef. It's right over here.
It's too technical.
Wait a minute, I lost it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna start over. So, I mean, first question, I'm sure everyone wants to know, will you do it again?
The problem with this question is that it takes 3 years, and if I was by myself, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I would be practicing for the competition. But dragging your family and my entire school, my entire staff, for another 3 years like this would be unfair to them. But if it was just me, oh yeah, it's a rush.
I think that's you know, you keep saying another 3 years, and I think it's important. I really don't think people understand the process of getting to the finals. Maybe you can just quickly tell us the whole process through the 3 years, because I know off stage here we were talking a little bit, and you know, the competition and how much you had to put into this, other than just that final, was quite elaborate.
So once you decided you're gonna go for it, you have to kind of like practice, kind of like a sportsman would practice before the Olympics. You have to work on all different aspects of your craft, whether it's bread making or ice cream making or chocolate making. You just have to do a little bit of everything every day for at least a year, and then you are warm enough to be able to sign up. And then what you have to do, you have to go to France and compete in a semi-final. So there's a set amount of things to do in a certain amount of time, just like for the final. And there were 80 chefs competing in 6 different culinary schools. And out of those 80, 16 were qualified to participate in the final. And the final takes a year, is taking place a year later after the semi-final. So there's a lot of time in between, which can be good because you practice, but it's also killing you because you want it to be done now. You don't want to wait anymore.
I think it's amazing too that in the end of the film, the mention was made that out of the semifinals, out of the 80, you were the one that stood out the most as being ready for the final, and that's amazing.
Yeah, especially that I was the only one that came from another country. Everybody was playing at home. Everybody was just practicing in their pastry shop, and then when it was time to go to the final, they just put everything in a truck and just came to the kitchen. I had to schlep everything from Chicago by air, a big crate full of equipment, because obviously over there it's 220 volt and in the US it's 110, so you have to rent houses, you have to hire assistants, rent cars. I mean, there's a huge cost associated with all that.
So with the power difference, did you have to purchase equipment in France to use?
Yeah.
It's not like you couldn't bring equipment from Chicago.
Just for a one-time use. After the competition, what am I going to do with it?
Hmm.
So you just try to find somebody else who is doing it from the US, and you just give them the equipment, you know, as a good luck, hopefully a good luck thing, good luck charm.
Yes. So I mentioned this in the introduction too, and I think everyone would really be interested to hear what you have to say. I know I am. Under so much pressure and so much stress to do this competition, what made you decide to have a camera in your face the whole time, documenting this? And tell us, please, a little bit about the rules that you put in line with it and the contract you made.
It just happened. It just happened because I was already went through the semifinal, and I was practicing to be in the final. And one of our graduates, Flora Lazar, told us that she has very good friends who are famous movie makers, and we're like, okay, whatever. During this practice, you cannot care about anything else. So like, okay, sure, whatever. And then she actually brought them to Chicago, and we spent some time together, and they came 2-3 times, and then after a while they said, oh, we think that this is worth doing a documentary. Excuse me. So I told them that since they are known for being famous for cinema verite, and they're like a fly on the wall, I said, this is what you have to do. You have to be next to me, but you cannot bother me. You cannot ask me to redo something or repeat something. You just have to let me do my thing. Otherwise, I will ask you to go and not come back. So I asked them to do that, and they really did it. They really respected all my wishes.
So, and what about the restrictions that the MOF put on these guys as well? And because it sounded as though right in the beginning they didn't even know if they were going to be able to film.
Until the night before the competition, the French chefs were still typical. They were still debating if this was a good idea or not. And here you have those movie makers that invested a lot of money, because they first have to invest the money, make the movie, and then release the movie and see if they can make their money back. So here they are, the movie makers, and those French chefs, I could hear them. And then they're like, oh, we don't want to do that. And some others were saying, oh, we have to do that. And I could understand everything in French, but I didn't tell the penny bakers all what was going on. But eventually they let them in the kitchen, and they drew a box. It was like maybe 1 meter by 1 meter. And they said, you have to stand in there, and you cannot get out of the box and follow a candidate or what. So, and they did it. So everybody did what they said they would do. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing that they captured what they captured.
Yes,
because what I understand too is that there's different rooms that you're all working in too, right?
3 rooms, yeah, 3 different kitchens.
Yeah. Wow. Super. That's pretty amazing. Was there ever a time when someone got out of the box a little bit and got?
Oh no.
A French smack? No.
No. No. No, they would have thrown them out, for sure. The French chefs would have. That's it. It's over.
So let's talk a little bit about the MOF, and let's talk about the collar. Let's talk about having that blue, white, and red around your neck. How much significance does that have on the international scale in the industry? And what does that mean to you when you see someone who has that collar on there?
It just means somebody dedicated to their craft. What you need to know is that the same system was put in place around 1900 by somebody who realized that craftsmanship was falling behind in France, and this person started to put the bug in people's head, in politicians' head, and said we need to create some kind of competition that pushes people to do better than what they do, because otherwise 50 years from now France would not be known for craftsmanship. So the same Meilleur Ouvrier de France contest is for carpenters, jewelry makers, florists, hairdressers, butchers, mechanics, more than 250 professions. And so when you see somebody with the red, white, and blue collar, that means they are dedicated to their craft. That means, and not only that, but they are pushing then younger people to also learn whatever craft this is. So that's what's very important.
Well, before you even competed, obviously you dedicate to your craft. So now that you've done this, in what way has this, if any, and I'm sure it has, but how has it changed your life in your field, and maybe even the way you teach your students now at the college?
You just don't accept mediocre work anymore, and I wasn't accepting it before, but after that you just push yourself so hard and so far that you pass this on to your students, and sometimes it's hard for some students. They just go out in the hallway and cry, and then they come back. But that's what it's about. Is when you learn a craft, when you learn something new in your life, it's hard sometimes. But once you have it, once you know how to make an incredible piece of furniture or a cake or whatever it is, nobody can take that away from you, and you can make money out of that for the rest of your life. So. It really changed the way I was looking at my teaching. I was not getting harder, but more inspiring to make people understand that if you really push yourself hard in whatever it is you do, something really good will come out.
Yeah. So there are a lot of skills that you need to learn in order to do this competition, and working with sugar, doing your beautiful showpieces, even some sculpture. I mean, a lot of these things, did you learn all of this in a kitchen? Or did you do, have you gone outside the box where you've done glass blowing training or sculpting with clay?
Oh yeah, anyway, I'm this type of person. I'm very curious. I just like to look at things, and then I'm dreaming and wondering how it's made. But yeah, I took glass blowing 3 years before the competition already to put myself in a different area in my head, and also learn metal work and some clay work. All this just to put some ideas in my head. So whenever I was going to be ready to compete, I had those ideas in my head. You cannot sign up to compete and then learn glass blowing. It's too late already.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of young culinary or any age people that are getting into pastry and maybe just starting out. Is there any kind of advice that you could give to them other than what you've just said, which has been great, but for someone who's just starting, like right at the grassroots?
Understand that it's the food business is a very hard business with really odd hours. You work when people have fun. Not always the best thing, but and not the best profession for a family life. But if you keep a balance, it's just a very, very rewarding profession, and a profession where we make people happy. You make a beautiful wedding cake, people cry of joy. I mean, there's not too many professions that can make that claim, right?
I think you're going to have there'll be a little tear when you try some of these sweets outside for sure.
I expect a tear. I expect a tear.
Pretty
Usually
sweet.
I get tears.
Yeah. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about the internet. I mean, things have changed quite a bit over the last decade. And in terms of competing, I know we had talked a little bit, maybe you can touch on it. How, during competing and practicing social media, let's talk about that.
you need to realize that when you present a buffet for a competition, it has to be a surprise for all the judges, because the judges actually just judge you for maximum 10 minutes if it's for like a sculpture, but if it's for something you eat, it's maybe the first 60 seconds, and then they made up their mind. So if they have never seen or heard of what you're presenting to them, they're surprised, and then it's already good. But nowadays with social medias and smartphones and everything, if you practice and if you let your stuff lay around, whether it's a cake or a sculpture, and then maybe there's an assistant or a student passing by and they just snap a shot and then they put it on God knows what, Facebook, and then that's it. It's out there. You're dead. You're dead. You show up with the sculpture, they're like, oh yeah, here's the picture. We saw it already. It's boring.
So it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
That's why we have to throw everything away. Sorry.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about judging. You know, in all the films that we've seen so far, anyone who puts food in their mouth is overcome with joy, and they roll their eyes, and you know, Julia Child is whoa, and they're all so excited about everything she's putting in her mouth. And you know, you don't see one person in this documentary put something in their mouth and go, oh, that you know, everyone is so it's a different type of cooking. You're cooking the best food that you can cook, but it's not for someone to have joy from eating it. It's to be the best that it can be. And when you watch these judges eat this food, there's never there's a and they look at each other. And let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about cooking for judges.
Yeah, it's completely different cooking than cooking for people in a restaurant. Those judges have eaten so much fancy food and intriguing food since the beginning of their career. So you gotta surprise them a little bit with a little something, okay? A little something, but at the end it has to be very good. It has to be good, like somebody would come to a restaurant and eat something very good. Then you have to have a touch of imagination. And what the judges are doing, they're trying to detect everything they can, and if they don't, then they make a face, you know, and right, there's some Pierre Hermé making like one of those, and so they're trying to detect every spice because they have the actual recipe in front of them on paper, so they look and then they see if they can figure it out, okay? So that's why they make all those faces.
And they don't want you to let you know that they really like what you're tasting.
No, because they're French.
Yeah. And you're French, right?
That's what they told me.
Nice. Camaraderie. This is great. Let's talk about something that I think everyone witnessed in the film, and you know, I think you watch this film, you see the passion between the chefs, you see the competitors, the judges. Everyone really understands what you're doing and how much you've put into it. And when you see something like Philippe's sculpture break, everyone's eyes cheered up. Everyone was just, oh. And, you know, really, you get a good picture of what that feeling is, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the feeling in the room during the competition.
The good news is that for this competition, you're competing against yourself, which is, I think, the best. It's the best type of competition because you just have to compete for a good score in each category. Okay, if one category you are under 10 points out of 20 is the maximum, you go home. Okay, so that's good because the people next to you are not your enemies. On the contrary, before the competition, we just try to see who is there and recognize some people and say, you know, and we tell them, if you need something during the competition, tell me. If I can help you, I'll help you. And then the other way around, right? Help me if I ask for your help. You just pick a couple guys, not the whole 16, but because something is gonna happen to you, and you better have friends helping you. And what you don't see in the film is that when he broke his showpiece, he was not in my kitchen, it was the kitchen next door, and then they came in all the kitchens and they said, who has extra sugar for somebody to cook more sugar? And I said, oh, I have 3,000 grams of sugar, 6 pounds, here it is, you know. I didn't know who it was, and I don't care, because you hope that they will do it for you. So, yeah. But that's what's wonderful. You can feel it in the movie. These people all come together and cry together and shake their head. All those candidates, yeah. and at the end, some win, some don't. But what it's all about, it's everybody pulling together to try to do a better job than what you did yesterday.
Yeah, that's great. This always comes up. Gender. There's not one woman in the competition.
I don't know why.
And listen, yeah, I did some research. Okay. There has never been a woman in the competition.
No.
And I'd like to hear what you think of that. I'd also like to hear most of the greatest pastry chefs I know are women. Yep. And France versus the States, Chicago. Where are the women in the pastry scene, in the culinary scene in Chicago, and just kind of your feelings on that?
I apprenticed in 1976. I was 2 years old, and at the time there were no women in pastry in France. Zero, absolutely not. And now, thank God, things have changed a lot, and I have no idea why. By the way, it doesn't make sense at all, because at home. The best cooks were always women, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't understand. Huh?
Mom is
Laura
the best Calder, cook. Everybody.
Mom is the best cook. So I don't know why it did not translate. But at the time, no women. Now there's quite a lot of women in pastry in France, but maybe for every every 100 male chefs, you have 2, 3. That's the progress they have over there. Mm-hmm. And for your research, last time in the MOF in hot food, one woman became a MOF, the first woman ever to become MOF in cooking.
Who was that?
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm not a cook. And I'm hoping that a woman is gonna break the mold in pastry in France, because in the US, in my school, for instance, I have 85 to 90% women. Yeah. And they do an incredible job. They have a very fine touch when it comes to pastry. They're very disciplined, so I don't know why. And I don't understand why it can be 90% women in the US and maybe 5% in France.
Yeah. I think that everyone here would be very interested to hear about this too. You're working on a book. You're working on putting something together, which brings some recipes from the film and whatnot. And that, I believe, is coming out in 2013. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit?
Well, now that I'm not competing anymore, I need to do something, right? Otherwise, I'm bored. So. I decided to write my first book. It's a book with stories of my apprenticeship, where it all started, stories of the film, advice for the people who want to learn how to bake. Also some very good tips on food science, because if you don't understand why the pie crust doesn't work out, then you shouldn't bake. So it's a first book to just cover a lot of different bases, and I thought it was a good project for me, because otherwise on weekend I'm just sitting at home and I'm not doing anything. So right now I'm just writing recipes on the weekend.
Nice. Well, I think you might not be competing, but I know that you're very busy. I noticed you're coaching the 2012 team going to the World Pastry Championship, which is pretty amazing. Please tell us about that, and how is it different being on the coaching side of things rather than being competing?
3 of my teachers asked me if they could participate in this championship, so I said yes, of course, because they did help me. Did help me to compete, and they helped also Sebastian Cannon, my business partner, to become an MOF. So you always have to give back, and we said yes, you can compete, and we even gave them an entire kitchen for 2 years. So that's a big loss of revenue for me, but it doesn't matter. Life is not about money. Life is about giving back and helping others to fulfill their dreams. And so they already won the National Pastry Championship to get the honor to represent the United States. For this year in July, they're going to be competing against 8 other countries. So it is very hard to be a coach, because when you compete, you don't see anything. You lose all your power. The most simple things that you know how to do, you struggle making. And when you don't compete, you see it all. It's right there, and I tell my guys, I said, what are you doing? This is a very simple cookie. You cannot even do that. But it's always like that. When you compete, you're under so much stress that you ask yourself, why can I make a cookie? It's just a cookie, a stupid cookie.
And you had a camera in your face.
I know.
Wow. Okay, before I open it up to the audience, just a few personal questions. So, favorite tool in the pastry shop? What is your go-to tool? You have a favorite?
I would say just a paring knife, a small knife, because I always ask myself if I'm stranded on an island, with a small knife I can do a lot of damage.
Nice. And your favorite restaurant in Chicago, being from Chicago, where if any of us are going to Chicago, where should we eat?
I like to go to a small restaurant called La Sardine. It's a small French restaurant. It just makes me feel like being in France, and you just go there, and I know everybody knows me, nobody's bothering me. I just like being in my living room.
Nice.
My favorite restaurant in Toronto is Luma.
I don't tell these guys to say this, by the way, okay? He had the steak frite. All right, well, we're going to open it up to the audience now. Please make sure that you raise your hand if you have a question for Jacquy, because we need to make sure that you get a mic passed to you. So this is recorded. We are recording this, okay? So please put your hand up, and they'll pass the mic around.
Yes, I have a question. This must be a huge financial cost to train for 3 years, all the equipment, the ingredients, the staff. Do you have sponsors who cover that?
You're looking at him.
Really?
I can buy a nice little house in Chicago with the money that I spend. But it's only money, right? What am I going to do with all that money, right?
I'm curious about the judges and the amount of sugar they consume in 3 days, and how they handle it, and why they're not diabetic.
I have no idea, because I can eat an amazing amount of sugar on a daily basis, and I have no answer for you. I'm sorry. It must be the red wine that we drink all the time. It's got to be...
counters it.
Yeah, you know. But you're right. We eat a lot of sugar when we judge.
Could you share any specific feedback you got about your performance during the contest? We only heard the general feedback that you were ready.
Philippe Uraka's last comment was pretty much what I would do different. You know, when I'm a competitor, I put my hands in the judges, and I'm very good that way. If the judges say jump to the left, I jump to the left, jump to the right. Maybe I listen to them too much, because they were just making me change things too many times and too far in the game. Like they make me change the wedding cake shape, and which, looking back, if you see all the different wedding cakes, they were all different shapes. So my wedding cake as a dome would have been totally fine. I would have saved at least 2 weeks. So, but it's a very fine line, because you have to, at the end, you have to fight with the judges and say, you know what, I'm just going to do it the way I want to. And then there's lots of frictions and stuff. They tell you, I'm telling you, you got to do it like this. We were told if you don't change the shape of the wedding cake, you're going straight in the wall. And
The judges or the coach?
coaches.
Oh, coaches.
Yeah,
okay.
the coaches were saying that there's a lot of rumors that if you show up with a dome cake, it's not going to be looked at like a wedding cake. Like, so if I would have to do it again, I would just still pick coaches, because they help you stay sane, but then decide myself, this is what I'm going to do, and that's it.
Hi there. I'm curious what drew you to pastry in the first place, and if there's a common characteristic across other pastry chefs, and why you're so successful.
My father was a baker, and he told me to never ever join our profession. But he was mostly like a bread baker, and I saw him work really hard. He had a crazy schedule. So, and he didn't have enough machines, so he was working too hard, in my opinion. And so, but I was always kind of like artistic. I was looking at things always differently. So I said, you know, pastry would work really well for me, and it did. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
Characteristic that draws people to pastry?
Yeah, well, people who like to be creative, I would say. Those are the people, and people who are tenacious and don't give up. You know, it's hard work, and people who like to please others. You know, like I said, with a wedding cake or a cake, you can bring tears of joy. You know, it's always the best thing you can see.
Is your daughter showing any interest in going into pastry, or are you trying to swing her away from
Well,
that as
she's 13, so yesterday she wanted to be a teacher, and tomorrow a chef. She actually has good hands. You know, we say good hands. If you are comfortable in the kitchen, if you are kind of like a natural, we say you have good hands. And if you don't have good hands, we say that you have 2 left hands. So she's showing good signs that she could work in there, but I will not force her to do anything. She has to do what's best for her, and push herself really hard in whatever she picks.
Hi, me again. Sorry. I've noticed that, and perhaps I got this wrong, but I think some of the coaches were actually judges. And that surprised me initially, because to me that would be a conflict of interest. Can you explain why that's allowed?
We have been recorded right now. Actually, they are not judges. There's people who are judging, and you see them write on a piece of paper. And there's others that are they're not judging; they're just standing around, and we call them commissaires. They're kind of like the police, and they're just watching to make sure everything is done right. So it looks like they're judging, but they're not judging. And I made sure that Sebastian and Stéphane Glacier were my coaches, were not even in my kitchen. Because I don't want to have anything to do with monkey business. It's not worth my time.
Are all of the ingredients provided for you in the competition, or do you bring them with you?
Nothing is provided for you, period. whether it's equipment or ingredients. So that's another problem. You practice all those months in Chicago with the ingredients that you have in Chicago, and then you come to France, and the dairy product, the flour, everything is completely different. Okay, so you have to bring everything, and you are allowed to bring it already pre-scaled, which is great. But now you have to bring everything. Anyway, you don't want have anybody give you their product. You know, I don't want to show up and then I get some cream from some guy, right?
That's crazy. I gotta jump in here. So did you bring your dairy products from the States, or did you have to use European?
I had to use European because they don't let you. You could play games and then bring stuff in your crate, because I brought a crate that's the size, I don't know, it's the size of a car, and with all my stuff in there. So I could have snuck everything in from the US, but that's taking a huge risk. If somebody at the customs finds this, they just actually destroy your entire crate, and then you're done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of custom-made molds, equipment that you would never have time to make again.
Yeah. Pastry is very much scientific. There's a lot of, when you're cooking in a kitchen, there's a lot of things you can do. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. With pastry, if you scale something wrong, or you use a different ingredient, or the altitude's different, or the temperature of the room's different, it affects the finished product. And I think that's, even just last week, I had a recipe that was from Europe, and the cream we used was 40% cream. So I don't know if you have 40% cream that you can use in Chicago to practice, but if you're used to using a 30% cream or a 35% cream, and then you go to Europe and you have to do this competition using European ingredients, it's completely different.
Completely different in taste and the way the products react. You can find the same type of cream in percentage, right? 40% fat, 30% fat, 33% fat. I'm not going to bore you. 30% fat, and but the way it's pasteurized is completely different, and so it reacts completely different in your recipes. In France, you can find raw cream, raw milk that have never been pasteurized, which is the best thing to eat. In the US, you cannot find that because, something gets sick.
So how did you adjust? How did you adjust if you weren't practicing with those products?
You just have to adjust. You just have to redo all your recipes and then just tweak them a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, hoping that there's no big changes, but you have to redo everything.
Wow. That's a challenge in itself.
Yes.
Being a pastry chef, you have to be very versatile and knowledgeable in so many different aspects of your field. What would you say is your favorite medium to work with, and why?
It's funny because I told my dad that he was just a baker, because he's just working with 4 ingredients: flour, water, yeast, salt, and I'm going to be better than him. I'm going to be a pastry chef because I can play with chocolate and sugar and nuts, but now my favorite thing to do is bread, so I should just shut up, right?
I have a question about the cheating part. At the very beginning, I'm right here. In the beginning, before everyone was started, he was talking about cheating and people will be walking around. What would be sort of a couple of examples of what cheating is, and were there any famous cases of people cheating and getting knocked out?
Again, we're being recorded right now.
Yeah, but you're not competing again, and it's all.
In the old days, old days, not the days that I can remember, it was whoever showed up with the longest coat that would win. You come in the even though it's not the winter, you come with a long coat, and then there's like all those pockets, and then. So there were rumors that things like this were happening, and also you're allowed to bring one piece of furniture with drawers, to put all your equipment in there, and some of those pieces of furniture had secret drawers, and finished product. It's great if you have a sugar flour in a drawer. You don't have to make it. You save 1 hour. It has to be a secret drawer because before the competition, they check your workstation. They take it apart inside and out. And if they find one thing that is already pre-mixed or one whatever finished product, you pack your bags, you know? Yeah, you can bring tools, yeah. You can bring all your tools, but you cannot bring 2 ingredients that are mixed together or a finished product. Never happen.
I had a question, and it pertained to whether the MOF winners typically, it seems they're French. Does one have to be a French national citizen or have been born in France in order to compete? Or is the competition open to Canadians or Americans of non-French descent?
Actually, I always thought it was only for the French, but it's not true. You can come from Canada if you want to. Hey, the first
Canadian woman right there.
First Canadian muffin, it's a woman. No? Yeah? You going for it?
You're not going for it, no.
But you're gonna have to go through. What I didn't mention is that before the semifinal, there's also a written exam that you have to go through, and it's all in French. So it's kind of a French exam, you know. So you have to be fluent in French. That's what they require, and I believe you have to have worked in France for a few years, but you don't have to be French to get the title.
I think we'll take maybe 2 more questions, and then we're gonna go enjoy some lovely treats outside.
Yeah,
Oh.
I see you.
I have a question about Kurt. How do you choose your assistant, and is Kurt inspired by his experience, and is he still a pastry chef?
I had picked a different assistant before Kurt, and because you need a person who will follow you through this thing, not making money. I mean, I was paying the person very, very little, just enough to survive. Like, tell me your expenses, and then I'll cover them. That's it. And that's the kind of person you want, and a person who works 12, 14 hours a day, scaling for you, doing all the thing. So I had a guy, was a Chinese guy who took our program, and he was really like a machine, and never asked any question. Was just like, I'm like, this guy is perfect, you know, perfect. And then, but he was asking himself a lot of questions about stuff, about pastry, and then suddenly the questions were about life, and I'm like, I don't know what. And then he was showing signs of not being sure of what he wants to do in life in general, like, why am I here on this earth? I'm like, whoa. I don't need that. So I had to let this person go, and then Kurt was there. He was taking my program, and I didn't even finish telling him what I wanted. He's like, I'm there. and so he just followed me, and after that he became a pastry chef in Milwaukee. For a hotel, and now he's pastry chef for a group of 6 restaurants. So it totally inspired him, and he's doing really well. He's, you know, one of the best pastry chefs in Milwaukee. So good for him. He took what the best out of this experience, which is what I told him. You know, if you do a good job, you'll see things that will change your life. So he was smart enough to take that with him.
Hi there.
Hi.
If dairy companies were to innovate, besides raw milk, what is it that you'd like to see, for instance, in butter category?
in butter? Well, in France they have this. It's called dry butter. It's 100% butter. There's no water in there, and it's a very good candidate to counter shortening. I don't know if people use shortening here in Canada a lot, but in the US they have this idea that shortening is a good candidate for a short crust or whatever for baking, and it was used in like the 30s, 40s when air conditioning was not around, and I think there was a shortage of butter, and then somebody decided that shortening is good, but I'll put shortening on a piece of bread for you and make you eat it, and then. So I would like to see a butter that is 100% fat and would be exactly like shortening, and then finally we can just like throw all the shortening in the dumpster and just move on. Shortening is one molecule away from being plastic, something like that.
What about
or wax or something like crazy like that.
So butter it is. Well, listen, everyone. I want to thank Jacquy for coming. This is pretty amazing to have Jacquy here, guys.
Thank you very much.
I know there's probably lots more questions. Jacquy will be around for a bit, so you're going to be able to ask him some questions outside as well, if you didn't get your question in tonight. We do have quite a bit of treats outside for you to taste, so when you get out there, there's some stanchions that are set up. You can line up and enjoy some of the treats that Jacquy has prepared and brought from the pastry school. And then if you still got a little bit of a sweet tooth, you can head over to Luma for a little bite and a cocktail. But at any rate, thanks again. It was a great Food on Film tonight. We'll see you May 15th with Vital and Chuck Hughes. Good night, everyone.
Vital is a very good movie. I saw it.